Hey, Tommy from the Run Testers. In this video, we are going to be doing a first run review of the Saucony Triumph 22. Let's have a look. The Saucony Triumph 22 costs £170 or $160. It weighs 306 grams or 10.8 ounces for men in a size 8, and the drop is 10mm. The Saucony Triumph 22 sees some major updates to the line. The biggest of those is a new PWRRUN PB foam midsole, a PEBA-based material replacing the PWRRUN Plus found in the Triumph 21, that aims to improve cushioning, energy return and responsiveness. The same foam is used in the Saucony Endorphin Pro 4 and Speed 4. There's also an updated upper that's designed to be even plusher and more comfortable than its predecessor, and a noticeably wider base across the full length of the shoe to improve stability. On the outsole, there's a generous layer of rubber to provide grip and protect the midsole foam.
So it comes to the fit of the Saucony Triumph 22. I've got a UK 9, which is a US 10. That is my normal size I've always had with Saucony shoes, including past models of the Triumph. It fits me well enough. It's probably one of the roomier shoes in the Saucony lineup. Like, the potential I could go half a size down as I'm quite small for my size, but I was pretty happy with my normal size in the shoe. I've got lots of room in the toe box, which I like in a comfortable cruiser like this, and I still got a good hold around the heel and midfoot. So I'd probably stick with your normal running shoe size, but if you are right on the cusp of two sizes, maybe go for the smaller one.
So the fit for me in the Triumph 22, I'm a size 8 in the UK. This is a size 8. The first time I used this shoe was for London Marathon, and I did have a bit of trouble getting a good fit on this. I wouldn't normally use a completely new shoe for a marathon, but because I wasn't going all out at it, I thought I'd give this shoe a try. And it's a very comfortable shoe. Once you put it on, it's really plush. There's a lot of padding in it. It's also a very wide shoe. There's a lot of space in this forefoot, and as a result, I did find it quite hard to get a comfortable fit in it. I did have to relace it a few times during the run to sort of lock down the fit a little bit, because at some points I'd had it too tight, and at some points it just felt really loose because it's quite a wide shoe. I would stay to my size in it, but if you have narrow feet, take that into consideration, because you might find this a little bit too spacious.
So fit for me has been generally fine. In the couple of runs that I've done, I've had my Triumph 22 in a UK size 8. That is my typical running shoe size. That is the shoe size that I generally kind of, works for me in Saucony shoes. I didn't feel, I never really feel like I have to kind of go half a size up, half a size down in its shoes. Now, in terms of the Triumph 22 compared to the 21, definitely generally a little bit more volume in general in the shoe, a lot more padding, definitely I'd say. So I do feel like it's going to be a more comfortable shoe, or built more for comfort than the previous versions of this shoe. Very happy with the space up front of toes. There's a lot of space, I would say. It doesn't feel overly spacious, but the kind of room that you want if you're going to be running a little bit longer in this shoe. As I said, there is a lot of padding. Noticeably, I would say in the tongue, in the heel collar, does mean that you get something that's going to really kind of wrap really nicely and kind of lock things in and keep your things secure there. But it is, particularly in the tongue, I'd say the padding has definitely been a noticeable difference than the 21. Lockdown, absolutely fine. No kind of heel kind of rubbing, any kind of issues that, in terms of things slipping around. So for me, I would say going UK size 8 has been fine. Looks like it's going to be fine for me. I think even in my kind of skinny feet and this kind of wider, noticeably wider version of the Triumph, I have found so far that it's been absolutely fine.
So my first run in the Saucony Triumph 22 was not a marathon, unlike Tom. I actually just took it out for a relaxed 5 miles a couple of days before the London Marathon. Just cruised around my local neighbourhood. It feels like the kind of run I would prefer to use this shoe for, and it was very comfortable. It feels a bit softer, a bit cushier than the Triumph 21 to me, and it certainly feels a lot bigger, that's for sure. Like, the stack height's meant to be the same, but it is a fair bit heavier, the Triumph 22, than the Triumph 21, and it does have a much more noticeably wide feeling to it. I think that's why it is heavier, despite the fact it's got the PWRRUN PB foam in there, which in theory should be lighter than the PWRRUN Plus foam on the previous models. You've got a much wider shoe here, and it feels like your foot is very much sitting within the foam a bit more than it did with the Triumph 21. After the 5 miles, I did a run where I was wearing both shoes at the same time, and yeah, all those things really came across. You've got a softer shoe here, it feels a bit squishier. It doesn't feel like it's giving you a load more bounce back though, or anything like that, and it feels wider, more supportive on the sides. The Triumph 21 feels a bit more direct and firm, and it feels like you maybe get a faster transition onto the forefoot and a bit more punch from it, potentially. Obviously, it's very early days. There might be a lot of breaking in to the Triumph 22, but it did feel comfortable, and I liked it in its role as a cushion shoe. I think where I was landing almost hits the real sweet spot of the shoe. So I land at my heels, and I think you're getting a big wedge of soft foam there, and it does feel cushy and nice, but it doesn't feel particularly bouncy. Like, you know, given that PWRRUN PB has been added to this shoe, that's a foam that we associate with things like the Endorphin Speed, the Endorphin Pro, very fast shoes, but also very rocket shoes. And this isn't a rocket shoe or a fast shoe. It feels comfortable, and I did enjoy running around in it, but I'm not sure if maybe it's going to be quite as versatile as previous models of the Triumph. We'll obviously have to look at that more in our full review, but I think the slightly firmer feel you had with the Triumph 21, which I have here, did translate to a slightly more versatile daily trainer, whereas this is a bit more cushy, feels more like a max cushion comfort first shoe, and the weight going up and the extra width I think is indicative of that as well. But yeah, it was a pretty enjoyable first run of the shoe. I'm going to use it again now on tired legs after the marathon. I think it's going to be very protective and comfortable, but I'm not sure you're going to get quite the same feel as with previous models of the Triumph. It feels like a slightly different animal, the Triumph 22.
So I've actually done 2 runs in the shoe. The first run I did in it was the London Marathon, and that was 6 days after Boston Marathon. So my legs were a bit shot, and to be honest, I wasn't really paying that much attention to the shoe. I think my legs were so tired that I didn't want to really take too many learnings from the shoe over the course of that marathon distance. So I have been out in it again to give it a run out with fresher legs and just a more conventional run that I would do in this shoe. I am a massive fan of the Saucony Triumph 20 and 21. It's one of my favourite cushion daily shoes out there. And I was very excited about trying this shoe because it has this new PWRRUN PB midsole foam. And PWRRUN PB is a foam that I love because the Saucony Endorphin Pro 3 is one of my favourite shoes of all time. I've used it for many, many marathons and races and things like that. And I've got loads of PBs in it. So I really, really like that foam. So putting it into the Saucony Triumph 22, it's quite an exciting prospect. It's a brilliant foam and a brilliant shoe. What I've found about the Saucony Triumph 22 is that it does feel very different than the Triumph 21. And that's not necessarily a good thing for me, because what I found about this new midsole, it's a lot wider than the Triumph 21. As a result, it's a very stable shoe. It's definitely really holds the foot in place, and you can really feel yourself bedding into the ground nicely. But I did find that the shoe has become less soft because of the midsole. I also found that the transitions didn't really feel as enjoyable as they did in the Saucony Triumph 21. It's definitely a bit more responsive. It's definitely got a little bit more firmness in it so that you can pick up the pace a little bit more. But what I did find about it is that I couldn't get a nice comfortable rolling motion in it that I would get in the Saucony Triumph 21. Over for the run I've just done, I just did a 6-kilometer run. I'm a midfoot striker, and what I found about the shoe is that there is a lot of foam in this heel section of the shoe. I don't really hit that. I hit the midsole, and what I'm finding is that when I'm hitting the midsole in this shoe, it's sort of just deadening, and I'm not really getting any heel to toe transition through that foot strike, and it just feels a little bit too firm for me, and I'm not really enjoying this for those sorts of runs. That run I just did was about 5 20-minute kilometers, and at that pace I want something that's really comfortable and just rolls me forward and just feels really nice on the feet with a nice bit of softness. Not getting it from this. It just feels a little bit too firm for me for those sorts of runs. I know it's designed to be more responsive, but for those sorts of runs I don't really want it to be that responsive. I want it to be really comfortable. So as well as that, I would say during the course of the marathon, what I found out about the shoe is that when I started off, it felt fine to begin with. It felt very comfortable, but as I got later and later into the race, I did feel like the shoe wasn't really helping me in any way. It didn't feel really comfortable and cushioned and protecting my knees and legs. It just felt a little bit too firm for me, and I just really couldn't feel a nice smooth motion with this shoe. I sound quite negative there. I don't think it's a bad shoe by any stretch of the imagination. I just think that the ride is different than what I'd expect from the Saucony Triumph 21. So I think for some people, the extra firmness in this shoe is probably going to be good. Some people will want that. In fact, it reminds me a little bit of something like the Hoka Bondi or something like that, which has a much firmer midsole foam. And I know that some people do like that, maybe heavier runners that want a little bit more support and strength in that midsole foam. But for me, I really wanted a little bit more softness in this shoe. Other than that, I've not really had any major issues with it. I just think it comes down to the ride being different than the Saucony Triumph 21, which just doesn't work as well for me from those first 2 runs that I've done. The outsole has been fantastic, no issues at all on that. Over the course of a marathon, it just looked absolutely fine, not worn any of it away. Felt fantastic grip on it. It's basically the same as on the Saucony Triumph 21. Solid outsole. Upper, I've mentioned in the fit, is very comfortable, just very wide. But yeah, it really comes down to that midsole for me. And if you're used to the Saucony Triumph 20 and 21 and you're expecting more of the same, this does not feel the same. So it may be problematic if you really enjoyed those shoes and you were expecting more of the same from this shoe.
So I've done a couple of runs in the Saucony Triumph 22. My first was my first kind of run after the marathon, a very easy 5-mile run while I was away. Definitely kind of 9-minute mile pace, dropping it less than that because I was out kind of exploring my kind of environment. And then I did another run today, and that was a 10K run, slightly more up tempo than that first run, to see how, because for me, the Triumph 21 was a cushion daily trainer shoe that had some versatility about it, definitely compared to some other cushion daily trainer shoes. And the first thing I noticed is that it definitely feels like a bigger shoe to me. And I think, despite the kind of drops, the stack heights seemingly, according to Saucony, not changing, it does feel like a bigger shoe, like there's a bigger stack of foam compared to the Triumph 21. And it's a little bit heavier, it's 10 grams heavier. I never really liked that trend of these cushion shoes getting heavier. The midsole foam might be lighter, but I think there's a bit more rubber on the outsole. I think generally the upper just feels a little bit bigger, a little bit more volume in it. In terms of how that the shoe feels to run in, as I said, the first run was pretty easy going. I do think you hear that kind of shoe thud a bit more compared to the Triumph 21. Obviously, the PWRRUN PB foam is the big change here from the PWRRUN Plus that we had in the previous Triumph. That's obviously the foam that was used in the Endorphin Pro, Endorphin Speed range, obviously to give you something that's lighter, bouncier, that kind of higher energy return. For me, I think, it's an interesting one because I think it changes the scope for me of the Triumph 20. At least that's kind of what I'm seeing here in my first couple of runs. I do think there's some bounce. I do think that you're getting something that is definitely a little bit firmer than what you get on the Triumph 21. I think the rocker is pretty good still, so you can kind of get through pretty smoothly. It's on that kind of wider base. That's definitely something more noticeable. So you definitely get something stable, but you do get that foam spread across a much wider kind of platform. I think it does feel well protected. I do think there's still a quite nice ride, a smooth ride. I definitely found it nicer in my second run. But I'm worried whether is it going to have the same level of versatility as the Triumph 21? I'm not quite sure here. I do think I was able in that slightly quicker run to pick the pace up, but I do feel like that added weight, I think the slightly firmer feeling midsole does change the feel of running in the Triumph 22. Does it change it in a way that I think in a positive way? I think it's different, and I think people who like the Triumph 21 might find it a very different experience running in this shoe. Whether it'll be a better experience, I think that's definitely up for debate. But yeah, it definitely feels different. I think there's some bounce. I think there is some good protection there, but I do think it's a touch firmer. But I think you can run a slightly more up tempo in it. But I mean, can it handle that kind of slightly faster stuff that I think you could potentially do in the Triumph 21? A little bit on the fence on that on those first couple of runs. Outsole wise, absolutely fine. Feels like there's a little bit more rubber in there, and maybe that adds to that added weight where maybe the weight hasn't been added in the midsole and the foam, but it maybe has come in the upper and the outsole. But gripping wise, I was in dry conditions, absolutely fine. A little bit of rain, but nothing to really kind of test it. And I feel like it's going to be well built for kind of handling a lot of mileage. So a one not so memorable run, a second better run, just feels like a very different Triumph to me so far.
So very initial verdict from me on the Triumph 22 is you're going to have more of a max cushioned cruiser here with the latest model of the shoe. It feels softer, it feels very comfortable to me, it feels wider, supportive, all good things in an easy day shoe, and I think it'd be a very good shoe for new runners as well. But I wonder if it will have slightly less appeal to people who have loved the Triumph line for a long time, because the Triumph for me has always been one of the more versatile, very cushioned shoes. Like the Triumph 21 and 20 were both quite high stack shoes, but they had quite versatile rides because of the extra firmness you got from the foam, a bit more response. It did feel like you can go and run hard in them and do moderate moderate sessions. It wasn't a shoe that I personally would go and use for like my speed sessions and stuff like that. But if you were someone who didn't have a load of shoes in the rotation, this was a durable, comfortable shoe that then had a bit about it for faster runs. I thought with PWRRUN PB going into Triumph 22, you're going to end up with a more responsive, bouncier shoe. But actually, the other changes to the shoe, the extra width, those sidewalls of foam, I think have lessened that a bit. And now you're using that foam as a comfort first foam, which is quite interesting, I think. And maybe over time it will just feel a bit more springier and all that. But for the moment, I enjoyed the Triumph as that cushioned shoe on that easy run, but I'm not necessarily sure it's going to be quite as versatile as previous models. And there is a chance it might end up disappointing people who are very excited about this new model of the shoe with PWRRUN PB foam in there. Obviously, you still have the Ride 17, which is very similar to the Triumph 21. So Saucony is kind of covering the bases there, because in my mind, the Triumph 21 still exists in their lineup with the Ride 17. But this new Triumph, I think, is going to be a bit of a different shoe. Like I say, a very comfort focused shoe. And I think it does a good job of that, but maybe it's a slightly different role to what the Triumph 21 played for lots of runners.
So my early verdict on this shoe is that it is a noticeable change from the previous two versions of the Saucony Triumph line. It's a bit firmer, it is a bit more responsive, it feels a bit bigger and heavier, and it is a very different experience to what you may get from the previous two shoes. For some people that may be a good thing. They might really like this new midsole foam that's in here. For me, I'm just not getting the feel that I want to get from the Triumph range, which is that comfortable daily miles that you can do a little bit more in. Not the most versatile shoe in the world, whereas this is just a little bit firmer and just a little bit clunkier for me to run in, and it's not as smooth as I would want from the Triumph range. I'd also say that the PWRRUN PB foam in here does not feel like the PWRRUN PB foam that you get in the Saucony Endorphin Pro 3. It feels a lot harder and denser, and I don't really get any energy return from this shoe in comparison to what I got from the Triumph 21. I don't think it's a bad shoe. I just think it's a different shoe than the Triumph 21, and it doesn't really work for me because I love lots of cushioning, I love lots of softness, and I'm just not getting it from this shoe at the moment. I'm hoping that over the course of the testing that I'm doing, that it's going to loosen up a little bit and feel a little bit more forgiving as I run in it. But for now, in the first 47 kilometers that I've done in this shoe, it still seems pretty much the same, and it's not necessarily the type of shoe that I would normally run in for my daily miles or my easy day runs.
So initial verdict on the Saucony Triumph 22 after a couple of runs, and I would say that it is a different Triumph. Will people who like the Triumph 21 absolutely love this shoe? I think it's going to be an interesting one. I do think it's a different feeling Triumph. I think it is a shoe still designed for easy pace runs. I think you can potentially maybe, still run a little bit more up tempo in it, but I think maybe it's lost maybe a little bit of that edge, I think, from the Triumph 21. But I still think it's going to be designed for the same types of runs. It kind of sits for me with shoes like the Brooks Glycerin. I think things like the Asics Gel Nimbus, I think compared to the Gel Nimbus, I think it is slightly lighter. I think the rocker and the midsole feels a little bit firmer compared to the Gel Nimbus. I think that's maybe a bit more comfortable generally. And then you've got something like the Glycerin 21, which I think is probably the most similar. That has a softer, I think, edge to it in terms of that midsole as well. Probably it's a little bit heavier, but I think it's going to be designed for the same types of runs. As I said, I think it is, the price is kind of sat around the same. It's almost kind of that trend of those kind of max cushioned, putting more of a stack, even though, technically this is the same drop and same kind of stack heights as the previous shoe. It feels bigger to me, it runs bigger, and whether it's gonna, as I say, handle, feel that good as the previous shoe at that more tempo running, I'd want to see how it handles over a longer period when my legs are probably a little bit fresher, a few more weeks out from the marathon. But one not so good run, or not so memorable run, one more likable run in the Triumph 22. Definitely on the fence about this one at the moment, but definitely looking forward to putting a bit more running in it.
That's it from us on this first run review of the Saucony Triumph 22. Thanks a lot for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, click that little bell, and if you go into the Catch and Play, you can find a link to our podcast, which comes out at the end of each month. Thanks a lot for watching. Catch you next time.